Greetings, welcome to the SciFi Pubcast, the podcast that tries to be a pub, and perhaps someday a pub that tries to be a podcast. And as always, we are looking for customers to come visit our bar. So if you're passionate about something, you want to be on a podcast, well, let us know, because this bar is all about community. If you want to help us out, please consider leaving a 5-star review wherever you find the show, joining our Discord server, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. My name is Joel. I'm the so-called owner of the SciFi Pubcast, so to speak. And today, wow, we're going to have a great conversation today, I can tell you guys that, because we have Kerry Simpson, Derek Beebe, and Dr. Randal Graham, Arthur, Before Life and Afterlife Crisis, all at the bar today. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi.
Ahoy.
Hey. So we're recording on our usual time. At the very front of the show, I must say that I'm in pain because I threw up my back. I had a little bad fall on the Rideau Canal in Ottawa. And so the last week has been brutal. But I'm sober, but I'm taking drugs. So there's that, okay? So, yeah, if I don't make sense, it is definitely the back meds I'm on, okay? So there's that. So that's kind of been where my headspace is. But I'm glad to be back on the show, so to speak. Back, get it? Okay. Kerry, how has your day been?
Not bad, not bad. I've been awake for a few hours now. You know, typical Sunday. Been catching up on stuff. Finally catching up on Resident Alien for this week, which has been partly hilarious and partly cringeworthy. Sometimes all at the same time, which is weird.
Interesting. I've been trying to put down Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I haven't seen the last 3 seasons. And
wow.
It reminds me of like a newer version of the A-Team. It really does. That type of serial TV show. But there's good moments and not great moments.
Yeah.
Some good moments. Yeah.
The last couple of seasons are really good.
Yeah. Derek, how are you doing, my friend? How's Pennsylvania doing?
We had a minor snowstorm today, so I haven't been able to leave the house yet. But I did do some more cleaning. I bought these 100 disc container CD boxes, and I started taking out my DVDs out of the boxes and putting them in that. And wow, you would be shocked how quickly 100 DVDs fills up. Because I was putting old TV seasons, and you put 3 shows in there, and that's 100 discs. So now I need more cake boxes.
There you go. Or you can transfer the CDs to another type of digital storage device, right? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's all on streaming at this point, but I just kind of keep them as, I don't know, maybe I'll go for a long car ride and I can play them on a DVD player in the car or something. I don't know.
All right.
You shouldn't. You're driving distracted, Derek? Really?
Oh no, I do this every day. Every day when I go to work, I watch a TV show, but it's playing on my phone and I'm not looking at the screen. I'm just listening to it.
Yeah, Derek, I think you need to get some legal advice on that, okay? Just saying. Not us, okay? We don't provide legal advice on this show, okay? This is pure entertainment, okay?
Oh, there's one of the lawyers on the show.
Yeah, there you go. So before we go on, Kerry, yes? I forgot to mention, you're in California. How's California doing right now?
California is currently sunny and gorgeous, or at least that's what it looks like from my looking out the living room window. I have not been outside since yesterday, so I can't really verify this, but it is semi-chilly. Although that's semi-chilly by California standards and not by the standards of you guys. So. Okay. It might be shorts weather for all I know for the 3 of you.
I've been wearing long underwear, okay? Long johns. Oh, how I like to refer to them as thermals. That sounds so much sexier.
Yeah, that's way too. That's too bloody cold for me.
There you go. Yeah. So, Derek, how is the good old pub's kitchen doing?
It's good. I thought about doing something weird like spoo or flarn for today, but I figured I should just go with the universal dish of Swedish meatballs, which, as we all know, has an identical food on every single alien world everywhere, and it's a great mystery, and no one knows why.
Interesting. That's not bad. We can probably make some money off of it because it's cheap to cook up, right? To make, right?
Especially the way I do it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And
So I
is
guess
I don't
the
even wanna know.
universal full course meal would be Swedish meatballs and a gin and tonic, according to Douglas Adams, right? Because he said a gin and tonic exists in every known galactic culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I'm kind of up for that right now. Really, yeah. Gin and tonics and back meds. What bad can happen, right?
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Oh God.
Jinx,
Right.
Randall.
Those labels on the bottle are just a suggestion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And of course, we have Randal Graham, Dr. Randal Graham, author of Before Life and Afterlife Crisis. Drink. Randall, how you doing, my friend?
Good, thanks. Afternoon, everybody. I guess this past couple of weeks I've been feeling free as a bird, as long as you bear in mind that the most common bird in the world is the domestic chicken, which is typically kept in a cage. We are still under lockdown here, under, in fact, provincial emergency order in Ontario. And the most recent news out of that is a couple was stopped and fined for going out hunting Pokemon because it was deemed not an essential trip. So that's the latest legal controversy. But much like Carrie's situation, I look at my window and I see that it is sunny and lovely out, but also minus 15. So not exactly shorts weather, not even Canadian shorts weather. But other than that, things proceed apace. When I'm stuck inside, I get lots of writing done. And so working at a reasonable pace at the next book, and otherwise keeping my head down, doing some online lecturing and hanging out with you guys when I can.
Very cool.
But see, you guys are still on lockdown, and California just opened up again. Well, semi opened up again. We can go out and eat outdoors. Not that you would want to in the cold, but again, cold by our standards and not your standards. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but hey, at least we're not Iowa, which just kind of threw out all the restrictions altogether and said, fuck it, we're just gonna.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that today, in particular, America is holding, I believe, what is called Sports Ball Day, despite the ongoing pandemic.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what our numbers look like in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And just to remind folks, Randall is based in London, Ontario, Canada. So he's a Canadian. And this minus 15 degree stuff, Randy, you're talking about, that's in Celsius, right?
That's right. That's in proper temperature.
So
okay.
So in Fahrenheit, it's what's like 10, that's 15 degrees Fahrenheit? I don't know. I have to look it up. The scale is a sliding scale, right? So
I think it translates to PFC in Fahrenheit, which means pretty effing cold.
Yeah, there you go. That must be it. And that's in English, of course. Yeah, okay, good. Right, but we're not here to talk about COVID, the Super Bowl, or the weather, believe it or not. We're here to talk about Babylon 5. Woo-hoo! Yes. Woo-hoo! Hey, the year is 2258. Wait, that's not right. It's 2021. And in the year of 2021, one of the best yet somehow underrated TV shows of all time has been given the high definition treatment for HBO Max and digital download. And so we're talking about Babylon 5. There's never been a better time to talk about it. It's about and just note, we're not going to be spoiling the show with any of the major spoilers because there's a few over the history of the show. It's such a great show. We might inadvertently have some minor spoiler stuff, but we're trying not to wreck anyone's first viewing of the show. So there's
this
that.
This is a
Absolutely.
sales pitch for people who haven't seen it yet. We want you to go watch it.
And in that vein, if I may give some kindly advice to our viewers and listeners, do not Wikipedia this stuff, because the Wikipedia pages don't have spoiler warnings, but they go full-blown spoiler right away. And I mean, fair enough, because it's not exactly a new show. It was, what, 94?
It is 20 years old.
And so, yeah, I understand the inclination to not worry about spoilers, but this is one of those shows where the reveals, like I have consistently said, like a zealot, that the greatest reveal in the history of television is embedded in this show. like the greatest surprise, blow your socks off, blow your mind reveal is in this show. And the spoiler with respect to that reveal is just all over the place in Wikipedia. Like if you go to the Wikipedia pages and you're looking at the cast, and it'll just give out the spoiler like it's information that everybody's supposed to know. So if you haven't seen it yet,
like it's some information everyone already knows already, which it isn't true.
That's right. So I highly recommend if you like surprises, then don't Wikipedia this stuff. Just watch it and love it and experience it like it's episodic TV that you're watching for the first time.
Yeah. Now that said, I have not been able to find it recently, but I remember about 15-20 years ago coming across this chart. Maybe even longer. It might have been like a Starlog or something, where basically it was like this 2-page spread of all of the seasons and all of the episodes, and by star rating which episodes of each season like directly affect plot. You should definitely not skip, right. And which episodes you can completely ignore. And I've never found that that chart again, which is weird. But
I was actually just making that in my head before we started recording. I was looking at an episode list and telling well, if I wanted people to say this is the bare minimum that you have to watch in S1 in season 1, which ones do you have to watch? And I picked 8 episodes out of 22.
The easiest guide to that is to just only watch the episodes written by Straczynski himself. Because J. Michael Straczynski wrote 92 out of the 110 episodes in the series, including all 44 episodes in seasons 3 and 4. And that's the sort of heavy arc stuff. And he tended, it's not a perfect guide, he tended not to let heavy arc stories go into the hands of another writer. And even when another writer did write them, they got heavy show notes and had to write them at least 6 episodes in advance so that there could be no production changes. Right. But Straczynski sort of kept control. That's obviously JMS, J. Michael Straczynski, the head of the guy who invented Babylon 5. That's one way of making sure that you catch all of the key episodes. But again, that leaves you with only getting rid of, you're only watching 92 of 110. So it's not a big cull if you just read the Straczynski episode or watch the Straczynski episodes.
Right. And I know the movies aren't on HBO Max yet, but that also assumes that you don't start with In the Beginning, which you could if you're going chronologically, but you really shouldn't if you don't want to be spoiled about stuff.
Yeah,
although In the Beginning does have one of my favorite lines, which I use whenever humans are being stupid, which is arrogance and stupidity all in one package. How efficient of you.
Nice.
Yes. So
I suppose off the bat we should mention why we're doing this show right now, and that's that Babylon 5 now available on HBO.
Yes.
HBO
been remastered. Only the main series.
Yeah.
And the pilot movie as well.
Yeah.
And that's the new thing, because people have been
asked. Episode 1, which is weird because it's actually episode 0.
It's very strange. People have been bugging J. Michael Straczynski on Twitter for ages about when are they going to re-release Babylon 5? When are they going to put it on a new platform? And he doesn't own the rights anymore, right? So he's been saying, ask Warner Brothers. Ask Warner Brothers. And so it's finally happened. And I haven't seen it. I know Derek's been watching it, but it's apparently been somewhat upgraded.
Yes.
In terms
so
of
pretty.
So that's why I think the idea had to have this episode of the podcast happening, and I'm so excited because I love this show.
So I watched I looked through the pilot episode and the first 2 episodes. The pilot movie does not look that up-resed. So if you're hitting play on that and looking for that as an example of what the series looks like, it gets better than that. The main series looks much sharper and the CGI looks sharper. It's definitely not high def, but it doesn't look terrible either. The previous versions that were released online were very grainy looking. So I would say that this looks more like regular standard def versus horrible old-timey standard def. So the look of the pilot episode is not indicative of what the series itself looks like.
Yeah,
Speaking on behalf of people who were born around the time that Joel and I were born, old-timey standard def is an offensive term.
Hey, I used to record my VHSs on super long play, so I know all about grainy images.
Oh God.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I didn't even start with the season one. I went straight to one of my go-to episodes, which is Comes the Inquisitor, which has the added benefit of fueling my weird fascination with Jack the Ripper stories. So yeah.
Well, that episode of Babylon 5 is almost entirely why Jack the Ripper is such an important character in the Before Life series.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, drink. Good call. Or take a row back to
That's awesome. That's awesome, Randall. I never would have realized that.
Yeah, that's exactly why that happened. Because I just loved the character. I mean, I was interested in the in Jack the Ripper sort of mythology and history when I was a little kid. I don't know what that says about me, but I was. And then the use made of him in fiction since then has been really interesting to me. And what Joe Straczynski did, I thought was just fantastic. And so I knew he had to be a repeating character.
I kind of stumbled onto Jack the Ripper stuff, like, completely unintentionally. I am not at all like one of those people who is fascinated by serial killers at all, with the notable exception of Jack the Ripper. And that's only because I've managed to stumble onto stories such as the first Anno Dracula novel, the second vampire Dracula tape novel by Fred Saberhagen is a team up of Dracula and Sherlock Holmes, in which they are going after Jack the Ripper. Obviously, Comes the Inquisitor, Gotham by Gaslight. It's all like, oh, like it always seems to come back to Jack the Ripper. It's like, okay, this is apparently my thing. Even even From Hell is just like, oh, okay, more Jack the Ripper, great.
One thing about Babylon 5 is that the first thing, there's 5 seasons on TV, and there's numerous made-for-TV movies, and there's 6 made-for-TV movies, and there was a short-lived Crusade which never actually made it on air, which was a spin-off. The Lost Tales. There's some unproduced ones like The Memory of Shadows. They were trying to do a feature film reboot that never happened. There's an entire universe created around Babylon 5 with novels, short stories, comics, video games, all that good stuff. But the TV shows, yeah, season 1, we kind of suggested it. It's not the best season, but then the show takes off like wouldn't believe. Not only do we have Jack the Ripper stuff, I think Michael Straczynski. Sorry, I'm going to butcher the fellow's name. I mean, no disrespect. But we have Jack the Ripper, but we also have like King Arthur references. We have an order of monks that showed up for a couple episodes, right? So, so literature out there and history have been mined, and it's such an effective way to bring out issues and themes throughout the series. I think that's very much a feature of Babylon 5, and when it worked well because of it.
Well, also, and I don't need to bring up current events, but I know from my Twitter feed that I am not the only one who is thinking of certain aspects of seasons 2 through 4 in connection with the period of time between November and January 20th.
Oh, absolutely. I actually wrote to Straczynski about that on Twitter. Well, not this most recent round of descent into authoritarianism, but earlier suggestions that such things might happen. And I wrote, hey, how did you happen to predict events X, Y, and Z through these episodes in Babylon 5? And his reply was, because I read history.
Yeah.
And I was reading a bit about the show again today, because I haven't watched it in a few years, and the last couple of times I've watched it have been with the actors off-screen commentary. on the DVD. So I was reading about it today, and I was reminded that Straczynski initially said, like, his idea for putting the show together wasn't so much he had this plot in mind, it was formatting, and he thought, I'd like to save a lot of money on production by having a spacey show set in one spot instead of going from world to world and having to recreate new sets every week. So let's set something in one spot, and let's not have episodic plots like they have on Star Trek or other traditional sci-fi series where the world has a status quo and we return to it at the beginning of every episode. But let's have the world change over the course of a 5-year arc where there's actually a big, long, epic story that can keep you wrapped in it. And what he said that speaks to Joel's point, I think, is he really went into it with the spirit of Mark Twain, where he thought good sci-fi needs to reflect the world that it sits in. It needs to be a mirror for the real world. And so all kinds of issues, from substance abuse to religion to descent into authoritarianism, and like not a utopian human future, but humanity and other alien races depicted with all the foibles and conflict that we would probably observe. It's all there. But relating back to Joel's other point, absolutely, you don't really get a taste of that right away in season 1. When you go on Rotten Tomatoes, the series tomato meter is like 93%, I think. Season 1 is 67. And it took a while to find its speed. The one complaint that a lot of people will have, and I refuse to say anything bad about Babylon 5, but what I have heard others say is that some of the acting is not as up to snuff as you might like in season 1. It gets so good as the season wears on, and stick with it is always my advice to people starting with season 1. But don't skip season 1.
No, don't skip season 1. And yeah, some of the acting in season 1 might be subpar, but never from Andreas or Peter. I have, Veer's speech to Morden in season 1 has been rattling around in my head for the past 5 years. I can't think why. And it's great. It's great stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that I read repeatedly, reading different people's takes on the series, was so many critics keep saying that the sum of the series is greater than its parts. Like, you'll see people saying, they don't like the dialogue, or they don't like the characters, or they don't like the setting, or they don't like the CGI. But no matter what people don't like about it, they say that the whole thing that works together is just amazing TV. There's some sort of weird synergy between everything that's going on in the show that makes it hold up. When I first was getting my first novel published, my editor was chatting with me about a particular aspect of my book that was a callback to Babylon 5. There are a few of them in my book, because Babylon 5 is really, to me, sort of a base text that inspires a lot of other stuff that I do. And so I said, oh, God, you have to watch Babylon 5. And I made her promise that she would watch certain episodes only in my presence. And so the one that we're all thinking about, with the massive reveal that blows everyone's socks off and makes you have to change your pants, is one that I made her watch with me. And watching someone watch it for the first time and freak out and start jumping up and down on their couch as they see these big reveals happening, it's so gratifying. And it just, massive hat tip to Straczynski for writing this stuff. It's one of those things that you watch, and I don't know if you experienced this as a writer, Derek, but you're like, I so wish that I wrote that. Right? Like, when you see something that good, and you're just like, oh, God, that would be the biggest thing in the world, to have written that and know that people 20 years later are jumping up and down on their couch.
Well, to my eternal shame, I actually didn't start Babylon 5 until mid-season 4, so I already had everything spoiled for me, and I never got to experience all these amazing mysteries and twists, and I hate that so much, because this is my favorite show of all time, and I would have loved it even more if I could have, experienced it in the moment and gotten to theorize and wonder what was going on, but unfortunately, all the big stuff happened by the time I got to the show.
Well, okay, so I was I was obviously still in high school when Babylon 5 started. I was in college throughout most of the run of the show, and I did not really have control of the TV for most of the run of Babylon 5. So what I distinctly remember getting around, not really getting into Babylon 5 until about season 3, and it was right before the the 2 episodes we're talking about, and I distinctly remember UPN running the first part of that story as the season finale, like, and it wasn't until later that I realized that no, there were actually 4 episodes left in season 3. Oh
wow!
When and it's like they, for some reason, I guess they were working off of the TNG model where, you know, the season ends in a cliffhanger. It's like every so because seasons 2 and 3 of Babylon 5, they both have 2-parters, right? If I remember correctly.
Season 2 does not have a proper
season
2-parter in it.
Well,
season 3 has a single proper 2-parter, but there's a lot of linked episodes.
Yeah, so it's like with season 3 came around, and I like the first that one 2-parter towards the end. And like, this is the season finale. I'm like, okay, so when's and I had to wait months for part 2. And then they kind of did the same thing with season 4, where they stopped it like with 4 episodes until the end. And I had to wait until the show started running on TNG to go, oh, there are 4 episodes I never got to see in season 4.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm finally getting to see season 5. What the fuck, guys?
Yeah, for some reason when when PTN aired it, they would always hold off the last 4 or 5 episodes until the new season was ready.
And that didn't make any sense.
Yeah. So like when I had to watch the final 4 episodes of season 4, I had to watch it at 4 a.m. on a Monday morning, I think it was. That was the time slot for the final 4 of Babylon 5.
Yeah.
See, I was in a weird position of not having seen it when it was first aired. I had a buddy who showed me a couple of episodes from season 1. And then a few years passed, and I think it was about 1999 or 2000 when I guess the first set of DVDs came out. And I was a brand new baby professor at the University of New Brunswick, and I was watching these in the middle of the night on my computer. And that's how so I got to watch them all. I got to binge the whole thing. And I knew no spoilers about it. I hadn't read anything, heard anything about it. So I got to experience it in that sort of pristine form without knowing where season breaks were, other than having to change the disc.
Well, I think that's where, I mean, having semi lived under a rock in the 90s, it's like I didn't really appreciate some of the reveals in seasons 3 and 4 until I went back and watched the full thing, and then I was like, oh shit, this is cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I remember watching it when they first live in the 90s, right? And I remember watching it because I liked it so much better than, say, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Because by that time, I was so tired of Star Trek. Next Generation has played out. I was an original Star Trek fan, and I wanted something more gritty, more realpolitik. And Babylon 5 filled that gap for me. Now, I've since revisited Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, all those shows. Love them dearly, but Babylon 5 is very much a different show. To me, it's much more literary because of these themes and how it mines previous IPs, right? Or not even actually, like Jack the Ripper is not an IP because it's past its copyright,
it's
right?
History.
Okay, it's history, right? It's literary history, right? Things like that, and the fact that you have Michael J. Straczynski.
Well, yeah, the C is silent, I believe.
Thank you, Straczynski. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I can.
Have a drink, Joel. You might be able
the guy with the speech impediment. Great. But the fact that he had a 200-page story Bible right before the first episode aired is amazing. How he can actually map it out these arcs, and to me that was fascinating. Like I just wish Star Trek the sequels had a story Bible that would map out, right? I think the new Star Wars movie suffers from that tremendously, right? Whereas Babylon 5, it's part of its strength, and the world building, the myth arc, all that good stuff. I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan when I was in my teens. And this is way before the movies came out. And I reread The Lord of the Rings every 2 years since I was 9 years old. I read them the first time when I was 9. And the fact that I'm watching this sci-fi TV show on TV and I'm getting references to Lord of the Rings, and the young kid in me going, hey, wait a second, the shadows. Wait a second, the Rangers. Oh my God, is it Lord of the Rings? Something's bad is happening. Something's dreadful. All that stuff, right? And that got me hooked into this series because I could relate to it, because I understand the context, because I read the previous material like Jack the Ripper or Lord of the Rings. Go ahead.
Well, I think Babylon 5 came at a time when the nature of television was kind of changing, and I feel like, jumping off back over to Star Trek for a second, the first 3-4 seasons of Next Generation kind of suffered from this transition, where it's like, back in the 60s when original Trek was on, it was episode. It was serialized. Everyone forgot what happened, from week to week. It's like there's no consequences. Kirk has a brother, one episode, and then for the rest of the run of the season of the series, we forget that he has a brother. Okay, they around like the third or fourth season of TNG, that started changing, where it's like suddenly there's consequences for stuff, and suddenly like especially with sci-fi, they're allowing for progression of character, progression of story, whereas that wasn't a thing. And it's like the mission log guys, they come down hard on Worf all the time for forgetting that he has a son. Well, that's partly the writer's fault for forgetting, for forgetting so often that Worf has a son, and never bringing him up from week to week.
Well, to be fair, Worf probably forgot too.
Yes. Not to
mention what age he should be.
Yeah, the contest between Worf and Sarek for who is the worst father in Star Trek is still ongoing. But I digress. It's like, and you could have you could start with the controversy of when was Babylon 5, was DS9 a ripoff of Babylon 5, whatever. But when DS9 and Babylon 5 started, we were already starting to get this progression of story along with in sci-fi. So I think Babylon 5 and DS9 happened at like the perfect time where this was starting to become a thing.
I think you're right.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, Carrie, I think you're absolutely right to comment on and follow up on Randall's point, what he's going to make. But you do realize Babylon 5 is not just some deep space franchise out there, right?
Right. I know.
That was a line that was actually added in to poke fun on Deep Space Nine, right? I believe it was in the first or second season. And how they broke the fourth wall by doing that, it astounds me. Great. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Ron.
I was reading a little bit about the controversy because Straczynski makes no bones about, alluding to the potential plagiarism controversy between Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5. I watched Deep Space Nine first because I watched it week by week as it came out. And as I said earlier, I watched Babylon 5 on DVD. And even Straczynski, when he talks about it, seems to suggest not that the actual producers and writers of Deep Space Nine ever read the show Bible of Babylon 5, but he had pitched Babylon 5 to the relevant network. And he said the top brass at the network, he thinks, somewhat guided the evolution of Deep Space Nine or the early production design of Deep Space Nine based on things that they remembered from reading the Bible. And apparently an interview with Patricia Tallman in 2017 somewhere suggested that there had been some kind of out-of-court settlement between the parties as a result of this potential borrowing. I have no idea if that's true. Some of the linkages are really obvious, like it's the first one set in the space station rather than moving from place to place. There's a lengthy arc in both series, right? Like Deep Space Nine is sort of cool because of its Dominion War arc that carries on for multiple seasons. And other elements about, without any spoilers happening, some of the life events of commanders in the series parallel each other a tiny bit. I don't know if I buy that as a direct overlap, but yeah, there are some similarities. I love them both. I find myself watching Deep Space Nine, rewatching it way more often than I rewatch Babylon 5, but there's something about Babylon 5 that I hold a lot of affection for, and I think it's more of a direct progenitor for shows like the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. That it's just like the arc is the thing. Like the most important thing about the show is the arc. It's not just individual characters. All characters exist. All the plot points and histories of individual characters exist almost in service of the arc, and I love that. I love that about the series.
Apparently, I haven't gotten it yet, and I need to buy it and read it, but JMS recently came out with an autobiography called Becoming Superman, and apparently he does go into great detail about the DS9 controversy in that, which I'm very much looking forward to reading. I have also read making of books for Deep Space Nine, and the way they tell it, they paint a pretty convincing case that, Babylon 5 had nothing to do with it and it was all just a massive coincidence. So I don't know who to believe. I want to believe Straczynski, but I don't know. It could have just been, convergent, parallel evolution, when two things just, arise independently of each other just because of similar conditions.
Or,
who knows?
You have those, have a movies have come out that like within months of each other that are basically the same plot, like Deep Impact and Armageddon, or
White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like, some people are just suffering from having the same brave worms, running through their heads, which is fine.
And on the subject of rewatchability, one thing I think is very important to point out is that Babylon 5 had a fraction of the budget that Deep Space Nine had. They had so little money, and the fact that the show is able to look as good as it does is a miracle. I mean, I think that B5 looks good. I mean, you can definitely tell it was done on a budget, and it was the first major show to use CGI so proliferally, and I mean the CGI definitely looks a little fake in the first season, but it does get better as it goes along. And for the fact that they had, I forget the exact numbers, they either had like a tenth or a third of the budget that Deep Space Nine had, but the fact that they accomplished so much with so little money is just a testament to the planning and care and craftsmanship that the people on the show made. And you really have to look at it through the lens of, this is a show from 20 years ago, and they had no money, so you just kind of have to, roll with it. The first season, especially, the production values do not look that great. The alien makeup, the CGI, it's a little simple, but it does get better as it goes along. And I mean, the story and the characters and the dialogue are so overwhelmingly amazing. You just have to look past the few blemishes on the surface.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't want to overplay the defects. I agree with you entirely, because there are little nits that you're going to notice in any show. Like season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation has some episodes that are just complete and utter dogs. No disrespect intended. As you know, that is my religion. And I love dogs, but I mean it in a bad way. They're just terrible, terrible episodes. And but whereas Babylon 5 has the distinction of having the only episode in its first season, or of any season of any sci-fi show, that I actually, as a baby ethics professor, made my students watch. There's an episode called Believers in season 1 about this family of aliens who have a child who's dying of an illness that could be resolved by a simple procedure that happens to violate their religious beliefs. And then the question is whether or not the doctor, Dr. Stephen Franklin, one of the main characters on Babylon 5, should perform the surgery against their wishes or should not perform the surgery and save the kid's life. And there are lots of great little one-off episodes like that too. Like everything is done in service of the Ark, but there are great little one-off episodes like that one that touch on really fundamental issues that are important to think about. And so, yeah, I made all of my students in third-year law at University of New Brunswick watch an episode of Babylon 5 in class with me, because that's how I rolled back in the day.
Oh, wow.
I would just like to point out that they were not believers. Their religious icon was not Justin Bieber.
No,
Believers with a V.
Well, there was the show itself was like a vehicle for some really cool social experiments. So I remember one of the behind the scenes specials I saw. JMS was talking about how the extras would normally play the same aliens throughout the run of the show, and at the commissary the aliens would divide up according to the who they were. And then there were a couple of days where he told the makeup people to let's switch a few people around. And suddenly there's Narn tried to hang out with Drazi because that's who they normally would have lunch with, but their makeup is different, so they're like you don't belong here.
Very good. But do you think in any circumstance would purple ever eat with green?
Yeah, they're Joker colors. I would have purple and green eating together.
That is not much of a spoiler. The purple versus green episode is an episode about a particular alien culture, the Drazi, who have this ceremony I think it's 5 years, where you're assigned in the teams purple versus green, and without going into too much detail, you have to act as though you really, really hate the other side, even though it's randomly selected which side you're on. And if only it had been blue and red, it would have been just 2 on the nose.
But as Ivanova found out, it was a hell of a party.
That was, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, we got religion, and we got cultural influences and relations between races. Going back to religion, there's a couple of episodes, right? We mentioned the Believers, but there's also Parliament of Dreams, and then there's one called Passing Through Gethsemane.
I love that episode.
Yeah, so there's that. We have with the humans. Humans don't have one monolithic religion. They have a bunch of different religious faiths, and even atheists, atheism, right? Not having a faith. That's part of that came out through an episode. So that's important.
Well, yeah. I think and that's fascinating. I forget which episode it was where Sinclair was kind of tasked with having like a religious cultural exchange, and the Minmari have just the one religious caste, and his solution was to bring leaders from every religion on Earth to meet with Delenn, and it's just like, this is cool. Like, yes, this is, yes, please do more of this.
Yes, that was super cool. Also, the notion of having a galaxy that's big enough that different races evolve at different times in the galaxy, such that some of them have religious significance for younger races, right? Because they're so powerful and old and can do things that are perceived as magic almost. I really like the pursuit of that theme as a way of looking at religion as well. And then some traditional religions, like the monks who show up and are amazing data analysts because of the nature of their monastic behavior. I thought that was amazing. This is not religion, but whenever I think of the monks, for some reason, my mind is drawn to Derek's favorite characters, the techno-mages.
They are monks after a fashion. I mean, it is a bit of a religious sect, kind of like the Jedi or the Sith.
Yeah.
It's like, if you think of it that way, it's perfect. I think it's perfectly reasonable to think of them as being a religious sect of sorts.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like players on the show, right? We have the Techno Mages. What's that? There's a mystery to it. But we got Soul Hunters, guys. Like we got Psycore, which we still haven't talked about. There's so many other themes out there, you know.
But the Psycore is really only an Earth-based thing, which you gotta wonder. It's like if how much of that is a commentary on humans and human prejudices, where it's the humans who basically are so afraid of their psychics that they or their telepaths that they have to put them under some kind of like Nazi-ish control, whereas the other religions or the other races are just like, we have telepaths and they're revered, they're fine.
Yeah.
Well, I think
while
part
we're
of the
talking
problem
about
is that
both-
humanity got telepaths a lot more recently than the other races. They've only had them for, I want to say, a century. So we're still in the birthing pains of figuring out how to regulate it.
I do like that notion, though, that telepathy is going to be a problem, right? Like, not just like, oh, look, betazoids, isn't that cool? Some people can read your thoughts. But before we get too far away from both the Techno Mages and the Psycore, one thing that I like, as given what my religion is the overlaps between Star Trek and casting and the Babylon 5 casting, because
Yes.
the sort of head of the Techno Mages, from our perception, Elric, is Michael Ansara, who's also Kang of the Klingons in the original series and in Deep Space Nine. He's all over the place in both series. And also the head of the Psycore, or from our perspective, is Walter Koenig.
Oh yes. Yes.
Alfred Bester, yes.
I as much as I love Chekhov, I love to hate Bester. And it's one of my few annoyances at the DVDs where my copy of season 4, the one there's like disc 5 is like corrupted at exactly the point where Bester is revealing how much of a bastard he is.
Oh no!
To a certain, if you guys know what I'm talking about,
that's a great scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's also other Star Trek people, right? Patricia Tolman.
She's all over the place.
Yeah, she's all over. Yeah, because she's been there. She was a stunt person.
Also, Andreas Katsulik played Romulan.
Tomalak. Yeah.
Tomalak. He was great, and he played a character in Star Trek Enterprise, in an episode called I think it was Cogenitor. It was, but yeah, he was in there too. He's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you always know his voice the second he speaks.
Oh, yeah. Of course, because his voice is so distinctive.
We even got Majel Barrett in one episode.
Oh,
the
yeah,
widow
that's
of
right.
Gene Roddenberry.
That's right. I think we also, speaking of people who are in multiple series, my mind is drawn to Mira Ferland, who we just lost.
Yes.
Who, speaking of Lost, she was a major character in Lost, but also Dolen, just a tremendous character throughout Babylon 5. I loved her portrayal of that character.
Oh yeah, I just finished watching Severed Dreams before we started recording. That is after comes the Inquisitor. That is one of my favorite Delenn episodes. It's just like, okay, it's like that. It's like I find myself saying, if you value your lives, be somewhere else.
I love that line.
when I get pissed off sometimes.
Oh, other Babylon 5 actors who appeared in prior sci-fi series. One of my favorite examples, Bill Mumy.
Yes. Yes.
Had been little Billy Mumy.
Yeah. By the way, Michael Ansara was also Kane in Buck Rogers.
Oh, was he?
Yes, he was.
Oh, I did not know that.
There's a lot of these cast members who are no longer with us, and that's sad, right? It's, I'm looking at some are alive, but many are not.
Well, it's what's doubly sad is this. I was not the person to point this out. If you look at the percentage of cast members from Babylon 5 that we've lost compared to the percentage of cast members from, say, TOS, it's like the show's only 25 years old, and we've already lost half the B5 cast.
Yeah.
And yet we've only lost maybe 40% if you count like Grace Lee Whitney from TOS.
Mm.
It's eerie.
And I have no idea if this is true or not. I merely read it from a source that I know nothing about the trustworthiness of today, and that was that while Straczynski's open to doing some sort of reboot, he's really, really against recasting roles. And so the stories are narrowing rapidly that you can have without having Andreas Katsulas and Mira Ferland around.
Well,
he's long said on Twitter that he would never have someone else play Jakar or Franklin or Garibaldi or anything like that.
Well, you'd have to go, farther out in the timeline. So like I'm thinking like after Crusade, because Delenn and Sheridan were still alive for Crusade, so you'd have to be beyond. I forget what year she shows up in at the second to last episode of season 4, where she's like 100 and something years old and like still
spoiler alert.
Sorry.
One thing I noticed about this series, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time in science fiction on a main TV show that we saw a representation of from the LGBTQ community, right? And I'm talking about Susan
Ivanova and
Celia Winters.
Talia.
Yeah,
Talia.
So
spoilers.
Yeah.
It's not that spoilery though, because it's not like an arc plot. But and it's been alluded to, but I think they more sort of just said it outright, right? I'm in love with this person, in a way that hadn't been done in earlier series that I'm aware of. Anyway, I think you're right.
Well,
it was very groundbreaking, and they did that before the what was it in DS9 in season 4? They had a girl on girl kiss with Jadzia.
Yeah.
But this was before that.
Well, there were also some allusions to the idea that Stephen and Marcus may have been potentially more than friends, although Stephen was more not Stephen. Marcus was really in love with Ivanova more than anyone else.
I had the weirdest thing with
What?
I didn't get that either, except for when they were
that was a
to be
joke.
Married once. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But my strange thing with Marcus was that, again, I watched this show sort of in 2000, 2001, I think, maybe 99, on DVD when it first came out on DVD. And the guy who plays Marcus the actor's name is Jason Carter.
Uh-huh.
And I grew up knowing a kid named Jason Carter who would have been about the same age as him. And he looked a lot like him. And I thought, is that him? And so I spent a lot of time going down a Google rabbit hole to figure out if he was a dude I grew up with in Peterborough, Ontario. Turns out he's not, but that would have been fun.
Amazing.
No,
Who knew?
I was complete when they introduced Marcus. I was like, okay, I want this guy. I need to keep this guy around. And that's all I'm gonna say, because
thinking about Marcus makes me think about the Rangers, which makes me think about the fighting techniques of the Minbari and some of those scenes. And especially, I love the fighting techniques of Lanier in the religious cast, this little unassuming secretarial helpy-outy guy who's just there to be a personal aid to a diplomat, diplomacy being one of the major themes of this show, of course. And then you find out that we're basically talking Shaolin monks. The religious cast of the Minbari. Very, very cool.
Oh yeah, it's like Shaolin monks, Shinto priests, they've all they've learned how to defend themselves. They're not, completely without their own resources.
I also like the fact that we see different levels of technology being used by the different races. Right, like Kosh's ship, right? The Volan ship is so different from an Earth ship, an Earth Force ship, which is so different from a Minbari ship, right? It says you have these different levels of technology, which plays into the power politics that's going on the show itself.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really liked about this series. Like, again, I love Star Trek. I'm bowing right now. But one of the things I love that differentiated Babylon 5 from it is instead of a bunch of explorers whose goal is to sort of expand the horizons of Federation members, instead it's an actual military, like whose goal it is to, either prevent fights or win fights. And diplomacy, where you have to have diplomats to prevent these things from coming to shots being fired. And it just made the stakes feel so much higher, right? Where it's not a quasi-military organization, it's the military. And they're there to enforce policy. And that policy is always determined in part by the politics of warring factions back at home and abroad. And it just made it feel a lot more salient in terms of going back to Joel's theme of reflecting what's going on in the world, as opposed to an aspirational show. What we hope things might be is, oh, here's what things are. And if they stay the same way, this is what they'll be like in space.
Right. Right. It's like I keep saying that, Star Trek is where I hope the human race is going to end up, but where I believe the human race is going to end up is probably somewhere more along the lines of B5 or The Expanse, which is very depressing.
Yeah, which raises the question, what type of influence does Babylon 5 had on other franchises? Because I would say that it influenced franchises like The Expanse, which you just mentioned, in a very impactful way. Or the Mass Effect video games out there, right? Okay, the fact that you have this real politic going on between different sides with unequal technological levels. Yeah, I think it speaks to other franchises. And the influence of using arcs as opposed to just have a serial, episodic, show that has come out. Like, I think myself, like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the first 2 seasons, not that many arcs. By season 3 of The Clone Wars, we're getting arcs, and that's when the series really took off, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe doing that with an arc of movies, right? Like, let's have 23 movies or so that set up a lengthy story.
Well, I think this is indicative of production companies realizing that they don't have to. I'm trying to word this politely. Treat their audiences like idiots. Like
fair.
Like it's like you don't need, like, yeah, you can have some kind of continuity and not just start over from the beginning. This is something I've been talking about a lot on DC Talk, where the more recent Batman storylines, they haven't really started out with his origin, because we all know what Batman's origin is by now. We all know what Spider-Man's origin is by now. We don't have to rehash that every movie. So, like, the production companies are treating people like, okay, we already know this much of the story. We know that this is an influence, and let's move on.
Very good.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just thought of another actor who I would be remiss not to pay tribute to while we're talking about this series. And that's not a big part, but John Vickery, who played Naroon. Remember, he's the Minbari member of the Warrior
yes,
cast.
I love Naroon.
Naroon is incredible, and he's also all over the place in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, right? He plays one of the Cardassian officials who, and he's also a Betazoid in the Night Terrors episode and a Klingon in Star Trek Enterprise. He's all over, but his character arc, and again, I'm not going to spoil this one for anyone because it is so good, but his very brief character arc in Babylon 5, for me, it's one of those moments that just gives me chills. No matter what I'm doing when I'm watching that show, no matter where else I am in life, you put the episodes on featuring the Naroon character, and it's just mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, the fact that Marcus can get a laugh out of him is just awesome. Amazing. I will not spoil that further, but that episode makes me laugh, even though I'm like, no, don't do that.
I like Babylon 5 because, to me, often you get these long soliloquies and the dialogue, right? It's very much watching a Shakespearean play and where there's an aside and they go off on some deep philosophical topic, which I quite enjoy, right? Usually involving death or power, right? But so it's, it's interesting that. And like especially when I was younger, I was really into theater, classical theater. And to me, that's an attractive quality of the series. I know we talked about before that Straczynski, is not a fan of recasting, but eventually, everyone's going to pass away, but the IP will still be there. Do you think at some point in the future, hopefully in the distant future, that Warner Brothers is going to reboot that show? And would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
I'll do it.
Go, Derek.
Everyone send your hate mail to Derek.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm torn about that because I love it as an artifact of the past. I love it for what it is. I like it within the four corners of what it is. Now, admittedly, what are the four corners of Babylon 5? That's a moving goalpost because Derek and I have very different experiences. I've only seen the shows and movies, and Derek has seen all of the things that exist. And for me, I'll go back and watch the show again, and I watched it with the director and actor commentary and all that sort of stuff and had a blast. Do I need to see it again in a different form? I mean, it could be done well, it could be done poorly. It's so hard to know. It depends on execution, as so many things in life. It depends on how the whole thing's going to turn out. But I'm certainly not, morally opposed to doing it. But I'd be afraid of it turning out to be something other than what it already is, like something less good, something diluted.
Yeah.
If Straczynski was directly involved, then I'd probably be fully on board. If he's not involved because of lack of rights and things of that nature, I think my feelings of it would be exactly whatever J. Michael Straczynski's feelings about the whole thing are.
So I would love to see a reboot, not now, but years down the road, just as a chance to correct the real world issues that impaired seasons 1 and 5. Like making it nowadays, you could start out completely serialized because Babylon 5 has made that the norm in television now. I mean, they were really the path maker for that to happen. There were small amounts of serialization in shows like Hill Street Blues or NYPD Blue, but B5 really created that model on television, and shows like Lost and Battlestar Galactica and The Expanse, they wouldn't exist if Babylon 5 hadn't gotten there first. So we all owe a huge debt to B5.
Yeah, it certainly created it for the sci-fi genre. I mean, soap operas were a thing. And,
soap operas.
So much so that when you look up anything about Babylon 5 online, the reference is space opera, right? Because it's a soap opera set in space. But it's so much better and so much higher budgeted than the Guiding Light, and so much better produced than no disrespect to other people's genres. I agree with you. It was the introduction of a format to a new genre and a new body of viewers, and it was just perfect.
All right, before we go, I have one question to ask you guys. Well, probably more than one question, but let's start off with the first question. What is your favorite character on Babylon 5? Let's start with Randal. What's your favorite character, sir?
It's super spoilery, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but just because of his nature and origins, Lorien.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I like that one.
And I can't elaborate on that. I can't elaborate on that without wrecking everything for everyone. So I won't.
Fair enough. Derek, what's yours? Same?
Lorien is a good second. My personal number one would be Galen, who is a techno mage. He's not actually in the main series. He's in the Crusade spinoff. If we're talking about B5 itself, I guess I'd have to go with the obvious ones like Londo, Jakar, Sheridan.
Cool. Carrie, what's yours?
Delenn and Jakar are first and foremost, and just I continue to I live for the one, I lust for the one, Marcus. Also, Ivanova is God.
Yeah.
Also, let me jump in and amend. Best dialogue ever, Zathras.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. My favorite character is Lana Mallory, played by Peter Jurassic. Jurassic?
Yes.
Jurassic.
Jurassic.
He pronounces it.
There you go.
Jurassic, yeah.
Jurassic. But I'd be amiss if I didn't mention one kind of minor character, but still important in my view, is Kate the bartender, played by Kate Cressida. There you go.
Very
I
nice.
saw you put her in the show notes, and I didn't even know this character existed. I was like, who
Yes,
is
I
this?
found the bartender. She's listed as an official character. I'm not sure how many episodes she was in, but hey, there's a bartender, and we're a pub, so that that's a priority.
Shocked that he would find the bartender.
The really bizarre thing is that you listed her as appearing like 3 times in season 1, once in season 2, once in season 3. So it's like they really brought that actress back a single time for like 2 more years and then just like dropped her. Like that's a weird decision.
Why not?
There's an entry on the wiki page actually, the Babylon Project. Check her out. Okay.
One fun character from who contributes to a funny story from my history is the character of Anna Sheridan. And I'm not going to, again, give too many details about her. She was played by 2 different actresses in the series. The first was Beth Toussaint, who played Tasha Yar's sister in The Next Generation. And that was just in a recorded message. But then when she was played live, she was played by Melissa Gilbert, who is, first off, Bruce Boxleitner's spouse in real life. And
Not
also,
anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, had also played Laura Ingalls Wilder in the Little House on the Prairie series. And when we first meet her, and I won't give any spoilers, 2 characters, including one alien of different appearance, were about to have sex. And I was watching that episode with a friend of mine who's kind of a stoner. And we're watching this episode. And, you're about to see alien human in sexual congress. And suddenly Melissa Gilbert walks in, and the dude sitting with me just yelled out instantly, "Get out of there, half pint! I wanted to see some bumpy-headed sex."
Oh God.
Oh.
And so that line has stuck with me for the last 20 years.
Wow.
Just the instant half pint reference killed me.
Oh dear.
Oh God, it hurts. Laughing hurts when you're. We mentioned Bruce Boxleitner. God, Leitner. Yeah. So just remember, he has some sci-fi credits too. He was in Tron, both Tron and Tron Legacy.
That was Peter Jurassic, by the way.
In the first one.
Yeah, they even have a scene together in Tron.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, big time. So there's that. And
Kaniki.
God.
Remember Kaniki from Greece?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
He's there. He's Zach.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah. All right. Any last thoughts before we close our doors and go back to our lives?
Go and watch the series.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then find a way to watch Crusade and all the movies.
And the books too. The books are excellent as well.
Yeah. So I try to get through season 1, and it picks up a lot in season 2, and by season 3, my God, strap yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, Babylon 5 remains my all-time favorite television series. It has been a huge influence on me. It's been a huge influence on my writing. The main series that I want to make is basically my version of Star Wars / Babylon 5. It's a serialized sci-fi epic television series. So B5 means so much to me, and it always will. It definitely has its faults, and a lot of those were outside issues that JMS did not have control of. But it is an amazing show, and if you can get through the early bumpy patches, you really get rewarded. I definitely say that season 1 was a work in progress. If you didn't like the main character, he will eventually be replaced. If you don't like the CGI or the production designs or the alien makeup, it all gets a lot better. If you think it's just a bunch of standalones, those go away, and things that you thought were standalone issues come back later. So it really is something that you kind of have to get through that hard part at first, but it becomes so amazingly good in season 2 and especially season 3. It's really worth the investment. I'm going to put on Facebook, like, if you wanted to skip episodes, I'll put up a list of like the bare minimum that you watch. You are going to miss things, But if you just, I mean, like for some people who just can't get through 22 episodes of a cheap 90s series, I'll pick like 8. But I can't recommend it enough. The series is amazing. The books that came out afterwards are amazing, and they fill out the story in very important ways. Everything about it is wonderful. It's still my favorite show of all time, and I don't know if anything will be able ever to top it, just because of the pure nostalgia and the influence it's had on my life.
Wow, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Great last words. Anything else before we close the doors?
The soul of the show, in my view, is Veer Kodo.
Oh, yes.
And I am just sad because I was this many minutes old just now when I found out that Stephen First is no longer among us.
Yeah.
I saw
died,
it when
died in
I
2017.
I was very sad when I found out about that.
But yeah, that back in the to the topic of favorite characters, he really for me it's the main characters are the main characters, but the people who assist them, like Lanier and Veer, the soul of the show is in the underlings.
Yeah, I always looked forward to that one moment at like the end of each season where Veer and Lanier would just show up at the bar for like 2 seconds and be like, yeah, same time next year, and go their
all the best
ways.
stuff happens in pubs.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. This show is released as a podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe today. It generally hits YouTube the day after it goes out as a podcast because it takes time to run the video and to upload it to YouTube. But sometimes it doesn't. Check your feeds. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Discord server. There's an invite attached to our social media. And speaking of social media, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I do the Twitter and Instagram accounts, and Derek does the Facebook. Derek, you're doing an excellent job, man.
Gracias.
There you go. Our show email address is management@scifipubcast.space. Carrie, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Carrie Blackfire42. That's KERI Blackfire42.
And what other podcasts do you do?
I do DC Talk, as I mentioned before. Also Cape Chronicles and Enter the Dojo.
And these are on the
Random Chatter Network, yes.
Perfect. Derek, what's your Twitter address, sir?
I'm at Derek J. Beebe.
And Randal, author of Before Life and Afterlife Crisis by ECW Press. Drink. Where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Randal_Graham.
Excellent. I'm on Twitter at Joel_Welch, WELCH. I just changed my profile pic. Yay, great. You can see my ugly face. It's closing time. Please take care and make it home safe. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Bye.
Later, everybody.
Music provided courtesy of Logan Rathbone. Podcast logo by Jea Rhea. Copyrighted Joe Welch. Listen responsibly. And we can't wait for your next visit to our fine establishment. Cheers.